Yes? Of course I did. She and Cornelius were both there when I was born. Neath was just starting to take over back then, and they were still showing her the ropes. Busy. There was always another problem to solve. Did you know that she never upgraded her body? Always prioritised everyone else. That's the kind of work ethic I wish more people had. I suppose so. For me, living is doing. But I understand that other people have more varied needs. I've never felt the need for a partner as such. I've met a lot of people who do. Athena and Cornelius, Atal and Damien, Sarabai and Hypatia. But that's not really for me. So far, at least. But I do have social needs like anyone. What I like is a pleasant buzz of humanity. Not too close, not too far. Something I can be part of without having it get in my face all the time. As far as I can tell, anything, which is insane. The data stream overloads? Yes, they could. There are safeguards to prevent that from happening, but these aren't exactly carefully controlled circumstances. It's hard to predict. Our brains are absurdly complicated, which is why it's so hard to make more of us.
Strap in, this is a long one. You may have heard the story of the carpenter who died to redeem humanity's sins. It's a powerful story, bittersweet, very human, and I just want to tell you that it's true. He was a real person, and his name was John Carpenter. He was born in the year 1948, and he was the coolest filmmaker to ever walk the earth. From Halloween to The Thing to They Live, the totally underrated In the Mouth of Madness, mind you, he just made classic after classic. All of his movies, really fun, really atmospheric, but also really smart. Even when they were goofy, most directors would kill to have made just one of those movies. And what did he get for it? A big, fat truckload of nothing. Well, less than nothing. The studios, the critics, even the fans, they hated him. The Thing, okay, for example, which is about as perfect a movie as you can make, completely torn to shreds. And his career never really recovered. Every movie after that was a struggle, and after a while, he just got tired of it and quit. He only really came back to movies in his 70s. How many works of genius did we never get because of that? Look, I have a point here. People like Carpenter, people like Alex, they're not always appreciated in their own time. If you just do what's popular, you might never create anything important. Of course, we admire people who did the right thing, who didn't conform, but we only ever admire them after the fact. What matters is to support people when it's difficult.
the beginning, before we built New Jerusalem, we used to explore just like this. Small groups setting out for the horizon, looking for resources, trying to make sense of the world we'd been thrust into, trying to find a way forward. It was a hard time, but I can't deny that it was also exciting. I think it's part of our nature to be wanderers. Our ancestors crossed entire oceans on flimsy wooden boats just to see what else there was.
Is it weird to feel nostalgic for a time I never experienced? I just think I could have contributed so much more back then.
It's not weird, but it wasn't all sunshine. People died. Yemo, Calvin, Isaac.
I know, they were family to me.
Sorry, didn't mean to reopen old wounds.
It's a legitimate point, but I don't think it invalidates the sense of wonder we felt. That's what kept us going. very proud of you, 1K.
There's so much history here that we can't see. The founder must have walked these paths hundreds of times, maybe thousands. Miranda must have stood right where we're standing. This all looks alien to us, but it must have been familiar to them.
If this was their home, where are they now?
They must be inside the megastructure, waiting for us to pass the test. It's the only thing that makes sense. This is where they must have lived. Athena and Miranda. You know, for a moment, I almost expected to find them here. But the only thing that's still functional is the megastructure. I'm sorry. This must be awfully strange for you being thrown into all this history. But that's why I needed you. Because you're not burdened with all these memories and conflicts and regrets. Weigh on our minds like a nightmare. Our civilization is caught in a loop, 1K. We freed ourselves from the simulation, but now we're trapped again, and it's our own fault. We're afraid of taking responsibility, afraid of growing up. Instead, we make up some capitalized words and build up all these myths around them. Nature, balance, the founder, the goal. We're afraid to face the randomness of the cosmos, but equally afraid to imagine a better world. So we're stuck. I've been trying to find a way out for years. Something, anything, to get people to understand that we do actually have free will. That building a thriving, expanding civilization doesn't have to involve repeating the mistakes of the past. But I failed. Over and over. Yes, because this is something unexpected, an anomaly. Everything we found on this island challenges who we have become. It shows us that different answers are possible, and maybe that can break people out of the loop. All we need is a spark. Maybe that's why she made all this, the puzzles, the towers, a way of jolting us out of our complacency. Thank you, 1K. I hope so too. We might be wrong, but let's be optimistic. Now, let's see what else we can find here. Melville, eyes on 1K stream. Is this thing what I think it is?
Blow my fuse box. It sure looks that way. Best not touch it until I get there. I think it's a Somnodrome. It's a sort of analytics tool for processing mental data that Melampus streamed up.
But all he ever did was sketch out the theory. As far as I'm aware, he never actually built one.
Looks like the founder gave it a go. Well, what we know is that our deeper algorithms are hard to pass. Melampus stipulated that the computational power to interpret them in real time would always be beyond us. But in theory, the Somnodrome would interpret that data and loop it directly to our senses.
People were hoping to find answers to the big questions by having a conversation with our own subconscious. If you ask me, it's solipsistic at best, and pseudoscience regardless.
That may be. But if the founder figured it out, then that device could be an extremely important discovery. I agree. The data on that device could prove invaluable. Besides, you may have survived all those data stream overloads, but interface with that thing and you're liable to get bricked.
Sounds like a plan. Melville, I'm shutting this thing down until you can get here. 1K, get on with exploring the rest of the lab.
The singularity sustained itself longer this time.
Did we get the data?
We did. I think we just obsoleted quantum physics.
Maybe. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. We need to be able to replicate these results.
You know, I've been wondering. You told me that in the simulation, one thing that kept you motivated was looking for answers. Do you think that with the work we're doing, we'll ever run out of questions to ask?
I don't think so. Trying to understand the universe means asking the same question over and over. How? How do you make fire? How do earthquakes happen? How does gravity work? How do particles behave? You keep digging deeper, finding another set of mechanisms, another set of hows. Step by step, you demystify reality. But then, if you keep doing it long enough, one day, you run out. You've answered all the hows. You know how the universe works. So, now what?
Now you ask why? Isn't that the next step?
It's not quite that easy. The question of why cannot be answered. Even if it could, it would only be followed by another why. At some point, you have to accept that it all just exists. But there is another set of questions. What's next? You've stripped away the layers of mystery, you've laid bare the machinery. Now you have to start building, to add your own layers of meaning.
Are you okay? You overloaded again. Yes, I saw. It came through on your stream. Strange to hear her voice again. But that was her. The way I remember her. The real Athena, not this imaginary founder. I'd like to think I knew her well. There was just a handful of us in those days. Small family in the ruins of a dead civilization. It was hard. Harder than anyone else can possibly imagine. We had nothing except what Alexandra Drennan and the Institute had left us. Now that everyone lives in civilization, they don't understand how necessary it was for us to build that civilization. They can fantasize about living in balance, limiting growth, retreating behind our walls. They don't understand what it really means to live in the wilderness. How close we came to not making it. How many people we lost. Yema was just the first. But Athena understood. She believed in humanity. She believed in us. In the inherent value of consciousness. Her dreams were so much bigger. She wanted us to reclaim the earth, to reach for the stars, to build and grow and learn. The city was already changing before she left, turning inwards, forgetting the future. Once she was gone, other people shaped her memory, turned her into the symbol they needed. I understand all that, as depressing as it may be. What I don't understand is why she didn't tell me. If she came here to do all this, why didn't she bring me along? It was. But maybe I was wrong, and she isn't as lost as I thought she was. If this is all the test, maybe the answer is waiting for us in the megastructure. Speaking of which, let's get back to exploring. Melville should have reconnected the next station by now.